Hello and welcome back. So in this point, I would actually be showing you how we can use the VLOOKUP function when it comes to the payroll system, how we can actually make the HR's work to be so easy. So in this point here, we'll actually be using this one here to be our table array. Then we'll actually be asking, or the HR will actually be asking if there is actually an employee, that is there an employee with a first name as Nick, or is there an employee with a first name as Simon or James or David, something like that. So not only the first names, it can also be on the last names, it can also be something different. So in this point here, the HR actually wants to know if there's an employee with the first name being Nick or with the first name being Simon. We can actually start with Simon because Simon is actually there. So is there an employee with the first name being Simon? So given that this one is actually our lookup value, then we actually have to get our table array starting from the F name, because the lookup value must actually be in the column number 1 of our table array. That's actually the rule which we actually said. So in this point here, you'll actually realize that we actually do have Simon. Yes, it's actually here. And given that we have Simon, we actually expect the answer to be a yes. And given that we actually expect the answer to be a yes. And assuming that we never add the name Simon, let's say, for example, it was something like Mark, then we expect the answer to be a no. So before we actually start or check on that, I would actually ask you to subscribe this. I would actually want to ask you to subscribe to my YouTube channel so that we can move on together, and also get to follow me on my X account so that we can actually build one of the largest analytics community. That being said, now let's actually dive into the VLOOKUP function. Now, in this point here, yes, we'll actually be using the VLOOKUP function. So VLOOKUP like that, then you actually open. It will ask you for the lookup value, which is actually on H23, comma. It will also ask you for the table array. Now, given that this one is actually F name, then it actually means that you have to start selecting from the F name, because that F name has to be on column number 1 of my table array, just like that, comma. It will ask me for the column index number. Now, in this point, you actually realize that I'm actually working on the F name only. So first of all, before we actually go, I'm actually working on the F name only. I do not want to return the last name, neither do I want to return the age, neither do I actually want the role or the salary, that's the starting salary or the current salary. In this point here, if there's a name called Simon, then I would actually want that Simon to be returned still. So I would actually say return that first column still, that is return the first name. So I would actually say return the column 1. So if there's an employee by the name Simon, then I will actually have Simon being returned there. So comma, are you returning the approximate match or the exact match? In my case, I'm actually returning the exact match. Double click on it like that, it's actually false or a 0. Then you close on it like that, hit enter. Now you can actually check that I have Simon being returned there. What if we add the name to be James? You can actually see it's being returned there to be James. On this point here, what if it was David? It's actually David. What if it's Josiah? That's it. What if it was Joshua? Francis? You can actually see it's working. So in this point, we are actually confirming if there is an employee with the first name as the one on H23, which is actually this one here, given that this one is our table array. And if there's an employee by that name, then return that name. Return that name for the employee. Now, what if we actually add a scenario where we have Mark? You can actually check that we do not have Mark. So it's not actually not applicable. What if we add Nick? Not applicable still, because we do not have Nick here. What if we add Victor? Not applicable still. So in this point here, I would actually want us to customize this not applicable so that we can be having something like yes or no. So in this point here, we'll actually be asking if we have an employee by the name Simon and we have to get our output to be yes or no. So let's now advance a bit so that in cases where we have the NA errors, they will still be addressed. So this NA will actually be a no. And a point where we have actually identified the first names and we are actually, and in a point where the first names have actually been identified, we'll actually be saying a yes. So yes for the cases where the first names have actually been identified, and no for the cases where we have the NA. So that's it. So let's actually get back to the first case there. And because we are just dealing with yes or a no, if function. So if like that, then open. Now, after opening the if function, we have to introduce what we call the is NA function. So is NA, that is, if there is an error, then if there is an error, so if is NA function, that is, this one actually identifies the NA error, then we close the is NA function like that, then comma. So if there is an error, then get us the result to be a no. But if there is no error, then get us the result to be a yes. Just like that, and you close, and after closing the if function, just hit enter on the keyboard. So that's it. So this is NA function identifies the NA error. And when the NA error has been identified, we'll also use the if function so that we can customize the output. So if there is the NA error, then get us the result to be a no. Yes, for example, Mark, there was an NA error. So get us the output to be a no. But if there is no NA error, then get us the result to be a yes. Now remember, this is NA function here. We actually opened it just before the VLOOKUP, and we also closed it just after the VLOOKUP function. Just like that, and it's actually done. Now, after hitting enter, you have the result to be a yes. So let's also go into testing it. So what about James like that? Now you can actually see it's a yes because we have the name there. What about David? You can actually check that it's actually working. Now, what if so before we actually go into testing on the first names which are not actually in the first name column, I would actually want you to check on this point here. And on this point here, I'm actually helping you to solve several problems. Like for example, if you are actually working on the task which actually require the cloud in Excel prompting, that is cloud in Excel, or task which involves actually dashboards and charts, which involves automation, which involves pivot tables and models, Power BI, financial forecast, templates management, all this will actually go at $550 a month. So this is a renewable service, $550 a month, and all your work will actually be solved. For the one-time task, let's say for example, the AI-powered dashboard designs, AI data analysis and insights, AI automation and smart macros, AI enhanced Power BI and reports. These are actually the prices. You can actually see that they are actually very favorable. And on this other end, I can actually design for you the templates. For example, the ultimate business dashboard, business finance trackers, inventory trackers, that's the inventory management system, AI-powered reporting templates, HR and payroll trackers, sales performance trackers. I can design you all those templates. But the best of all is that I can also design for you these templates and manage for you. The best of all is that I can actually design for you these templates and manage for you every month just at $50. That's a very good deal. Now, the best deal of all is for me to actually add you get you access to my Google Drive so that you can actually access all these 20 courses on Excel. Imagine accessing all these 20 courses on Excel just at $100. So remember, your accessibility will actually be lifetime. Yes, it's actually lifetime because when the site is actually done, you won't lose your accessibility to this site. So it will be lifetime, and this is actually limited to the first 25 clients only. So to the first 25 clients only, they will actually get the access to this Google Drive premium courses. So that's all. So for us to actually so we can actually communicate. This is actually my email here. So we can actually communicate, and we can make a deal. So that's it. Now, what if there's a case where we have the first name to be Nick? So we expect the result to be a no. Now you can actually check it's working. What if we have Mark? So instead of the NA error, we have a no. Hit enter on the keyboard. That's it. And that's all. And thanks for staying tuned. I hope you will also get me the task so that I can help you solve all the problems that we have in Excel. Let's actually stay tuned for the next video.